Push, my love. Push, my love. Ignore the doctor with a medical degree and 30 years of experience. And push, my love. Push. Get this little guest out of your womb. Yeah, you're listening correctly. We're going to get into this because we're going to debunk once and for all that Harry and Meghan have no children. And this is all well documented. And there's so very many articles, interviews, books that they themselves have written for the public consumption, thinking that we are as stupid as they are.
Trevor put an article out there that Meghan had a hysterectomy and couldn't have children. And that was a big issue in their relationship. So that says a lot to the fake royal kids right now, because obviously they couldn't have come out of her. So that's something that she obviously is going to have to deal with eventually.
But for us, I think we'll be seeing you guys in probably 2 days' time as planned, as a family, to be able to share it with you guys and so everyone can see the baby.
I took several slow, penetrating hits. Meg bouncing on a giant paper ball, a proven way of giving nature a push. I laughed and rolled. She laughed and rolled her eyes. I took several more hits, and now I was bouncing too, Harry reveals. When her contractions began to quicken and deepen, a nurse came and tried to give some laughing gas to Meg. There was none left. The nurse looked at the tank, looked at me, and I could see the thought slowly dawning. Gracious, the husband's had it all. Fortunately, the nurse saw the humor in the situation and replaced the canister for Meghan. What is really creepy in all of this is that he says that Harry set the ambience by arranging electric candles, the same ones he had used during his proposal to Meghan, around the room. So they couldn't afford to buy others. And among the items in her overnight bag was a framed photograph of Harry's late mother, Princess Diana, and also her hair, which Meghan insisted on having during the birth. I am sure she did. Absolutely, no question. This woman is creepy as hell. And I'm reading from an article from the Daily Mail, guys. I'm sure that you've seen it in other YouTube channels as well, because I've been talking a lot about this. And it's very interesting that the Daily Mail is choosing to feature this in a very ironic kind of way. Is this a warning shot to the royal family, to the palace, to say we're not buying this BS? And the article continues to say, despite Meghan's efforts to breathe through the discomfort, the intensity became overwhelming, and she ultimately had to receive 2 epidurals. Not 1, 2 epidurals. So 1 epidural was not enough because, of course, her pain was so great that it took 2 epidurals. Or either they didn't place the first one right, or they didn't, or the second. That's pretty odd. The anesthetist hurried in. Off went the music, on went the lights. Harry writes, push, my love, push, my love. I told her. I could see the tangled head. And the doctor told her not to push, but I told her, ignore this doctor with a medical degree and years of experience delivering babies. And do what I tell you, a drug-addled man high on laughing gas. And this is according to him, guys, of course. And just push, my love. Push, Meg. And the little guest came to the world. There was a brief moment of concern when the umbilical cord was discovered to be wrapped around the baby. But soon after, the healthy son was born. If the doctor was saying don't push, it's because they probably needed time to detangle the umbilical cord around the baby's neck, because otherwise, if pushed like that so violently, it can even decapitate a child or strangle it even worse. Harry reflects on his experience in his book, offering an intimate glimpse into their journey through childbirth. A nurse swept the baby into a towel and placed him on Meg's chest, and we both cried to see him. Meet him, he says. It is, and this is the part that really, keep in mind of the trauma that Harry says that this birth was like. He claims in one instance, he claims that the baby was 7 days overdue. In another tale, they claim that the baby was 10 days overdue. So this woman, who is considered a high risk pregnancy, overdue, geriatric pregnancy, having complications with birth, who needed not one, but 2 epidurals, and then they sank her into a bathtub. That doesn't happen. A doctor would never put a woman who's had an epidural in a bathtub. But we're going to get to it, guys. And this is what he says. These are Harry's words, the only living witness to Meghan Markle's alleged birth. Within 2 hours of Meghan giving birth, she and Harry had returned to Frogmore. This means that this woman who could not walk, who had 2 epidurals, probably had some damage down below. It took less than an hour. I need something stronger than coffee to believe that BS. What it means for those people in the United States who don't know, Frogmore Cottage is about an hour and a half. An hour and a half. If you really push it, you could drive from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage in about an hour, or a little bit less than an hour, which means that if they were back to Frogmore Cottage within 2 hours of Rachel Meghan Markle allegedly delivering a child, they wrapped her, barely cleaned the baby, barely cleaned the woman, and simply put her on a van and sent her packing with 2 epidurals in her body. There is no doctor in the United Kingdom or anywhere in the world who would do that. According to the United Kingdoms, it doesn't matter who you are, especially a royal child, a member of the royal family. A child who at the time was about 6th in line to the throne. And they're going to send Rachel Meghan Markle, a woman who complains about everything because she doesn't get enough of everything. She doesn't get that. She's going to now complain about poor medical care because that's negligent medical care. To send a woman within an hour or 40 minutes, 45 minutes, let's say within an hour, they cleaned her up. They haven't even really checked if her placenta really is all out, because the swelling needs to go down. So they sent her packing, and then she's sitting, getting a picture taken. I don't know how Meghan Markle is sitting and leaning and doing everything, because epidural, you can't move your legs for at least 6 hours. The minimum required time, according to the United Kingdom's National Health Social, like NHS, it's a minimum of 6 hours. It cannot be less than that. Even the Princess of Wales, who was then the Duchess of Cambridge, had to stay for at least 6 hours because they have to check. And as a new mom, you would want to make sure that everything is kosher before you go away with your child. Never mind her wanting to go to the cottage for her benefit, because she doesn't. You would be thinking, if you are a real mom, you'd be thinking about your child. Ensure, at least I know I did, I'd be ensuring that everything is okay. The doctors need to ensure that she's able to move her body, her legs, to pee, to poop, that none of her nerves have been damaged in the process of getting 2 epidurals, because clearly they got their first one wrong. Now, this is very interesting. After returning to Frogmore Cottage, it was only at this point that an announcement was made about Meghan going to labor, leading to a disagreement between the prince and his head of communications, Sarah Latham. I had a tiff with Sarah about that. She's not in labor anymore, I said. Because Harry is implying that the Royal Security Protection officers failed to disclose to their head of security and the Queen and everybody in the world, who is absolutely a must, that Meghan was on her way to deliver the child. That means that these Royal Protection Security officers must be fired, because they have gone against everything. They need to secure the premises. The first 2 phone calls, whenever a woman or a royal lady is about to give birth, even if it's a false call, they immediately notified their security, the head of security, because they need to send a team to the hospital to secure the premises. Let me tell you something also. Portland Hospital does not have an emergency entrance at all because they don't have an emergency room. There's no secret elevator. And worst of all, they don't have the... If the birth was so complicated, they would have referred Meghan Markle to the nearest hospital, which actually has an emergency room who's capable of handling a complicated birth. Yes, Fergie gave birth to her two girls there, and of course they did that. But just to give you an example, the Duchess of Edinburgh, Sophie, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Edinburgh, she almost died. Because her uterus became displaced and she was internally bleeding. She was really this close to death. And the baby, and she wasn't driven to the Portland Hospital because the Portland Hospital does not handle emergencies. You can even see this on their website. And their website, they tell you, if you have an emergency, go to the nearest NHS because they don't handle emergencies. They don't. Now, at the beginning of this video, you heard her brother, Tom Jr., say that Meghan Markle had a hysterectomy. That's what Trevor Engelson told him, that she had a hysterectomy. That is a well-known thing, that Meghan Markle had a hysterectomy. And if you have a hysterectomy, we all know what it means. It means you can't have any children. And he's asking a good question there. Whose kids, what is the deal with these royal children that are currently in the line of succession? You all know my journey. You all know my journey into getting Lilibet's. And we're going to get into Lilibet's birth. We all know my journey into trying to get a birth certificate for Lilibet. A certified copy of a birth certificate. Hell, there was even a famous live made about it, trying to say that I had committed a crime doing it, when it's not a crime. Anybody, and the reason why I'm again repeating that, because unfortunately, because of that live, people do believe that it is a crime to request a certified copy of a birth certificate in California, which is not. It is considered a public record. That is not private medical information. It's a public record. Now, the California state also I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we have Archie here featured. His birth is not announced. He's the sixth in line to the throne. And the palace got it wrong. The royal security officers got it wrong. Harry inhaled the entire laughing gas tank, that it was destined for Meghan. So this man is high as a kite. According to his own words, he is high as a kite, given medical instructions in a very complicated birth. First, that would be so illegal for a person who's not a patient to consume drugs meant for somebody else that are not prescribed to him. Unless, of course, the Portland Hospital has committed quite a few crimes in the delivery of a royal child. We had Meghan Markle. It was intimated that Dr. Penelope Law, a very posh doctor, because she's also a part of the aristocracy, saying that she was the one who delivered the child. There's been rumors that Archie, a doctor from the United States, flew to those are the latest rumors, flew to the United Kingdom to deliver Archie, which would be not true, because if the child was delivered all of a sudden, how did they have time to fly a doctor within a few hours? Even if you're in New York, you still need at least 6 to 7 hours to get there. And according to Harry, they got in a truck or in a car around 3 a.m. and went they got in a van. The royal security officers failed to notify anybody, failed to secure the premises at the Portland Hospital, failed to notify the Queen. And then on top of that, he sent the security officers to get food from Nando's when Nando's is closed. And they didn't know that Harry was going to order food that day. Well, there's a cafeteria. I believe there's a 24-hour cafeteria in the very same hospital. And this is why in Archie's easel announcement at the palace, this is why the palace got it all wrong. But I'm going to tell you why the palace got it all wrong and why the palace is still getting it all wrong with Lilibet. We're going to move into what Meghan Markle calls her second pregnancy. Yeah, we're going to move into that, guys. It was a July morning that began as ordinarily as any other day. Make breakfast, feed the dogs, take vitamins, find that missing sock, pick up the rogue crayon that rolled under the table, throw my hair in a ponytail before getting my son from his crib. After changing his diaper, I felt a sharp cramp. I dropped to the floor with him in my arms, humming a lullaby to keep us both calm and cheerful. The cheerful tune, a stark contrast to my sense that something was not right. I knew as I clutched my firstborn child that I was losing my second. Hours later, I lay in a hospital bed, holding my husband's hand. I felt the cleanliness of his palm and kissed his knuckles, wet from both our tears. Staring at the cold, white walls, my eyes glazed over, I tried to imagine how we'd heal. That is Rachel Meghan Markle describing how she lost her second child. And if it looks oddly familiar, that's because it's the scene from Still Magnolias from Julia Roberts. Because we know for a fact, at least for me, that there's 3 women Rachel Meghan Markle stalks to death. Princess Catherine, Princess Diana, obviously, and Julia Roberts. That's the scene from Still Magnolias, guys. That's the scene from Still Magnolias. And of course, this is what Meghan Markle said in the op-ed that she paid $60,000 to write to the New York Times. I recalled a moment last year when Harry and I were finishing up a long tour in South Africa. I was exhausted. I was breastfeeding our infant son. How can you breastfeed when you never gave birth? And I was trying to keep a brave face in the very public eye. Are you okay? A journalist asked me. I answered him honestly, not knowing that what I said would resonate with so many new moms and older ones, and anyone who had in their own way been silently suffering. My off-the-cuff reply seemed to give people permission to speak the truth. But it wasn't responding honestly that helped me the most. It was the question itself. Poor brave little Meg, with all these royal bodyguards, flying around the world in jets in the midst of South African women who have been raped, brutalized, and live in actual poverty with no access to even to the barest minimum medical care. Yeah, poor brave Meg. Now, sitting in a hospital bed, watching my husband's heart break as he tried to hold the shattered pieces of mine, I realized that the only way to begin to heal is to first ask, are you okay? Are we? This year has brought so many of us to our breaking points. Loss and pain have plagued every one of us in 2020. It is actually, and then she goes on to talk about Breonna Taylor because, of course, she has to make miscarriage about racism. It's incredible. It's incredible because then she goes and says that that this having an abortion or miscarriage is such a taboo thing and such a solitary thing that nobody talks about it, and you are shamed for having a miscarriage. But it is incredibly true that miscarriage is a terrible thing if you indeed had it. And if Meghan Markle had indeed had a miscarriage, I don't know who she was around that would absolutely shame her or not support her, because to this day, when a woman suffers a terrible miscarriage, she gets nothing but love and support from the people around her. And we have her friend Abigail Spencer. And the interesting part of it all is that Abigail Spencer is saying she gives a completely different story than the one that Meghan Markle gave in this op-ed. I guess they didn't talk before Abigail Spencer went and talked in that Netflix documentary, because she says that she went to see Meg and Meg was outside picking Archie up, carrying Archie in that huge, insane belly, and that Meghan had the miscarriage right then and there, which basically contradicts everything she paid for to have in this op-ed. Now, what is really interesting here, that Meghan, in her oversharing capacity, she says, when I was in my late teens, I sat in the back of a taxi, zipping through the busyness and bustle of Manhattan. I looked out the window and saw a woman on her phone in a flood of tears. She was standing on the sidewalk, living out a private moment, very publicly. At the time, the city was new to me, and I asked the driver if we should stop to see the woman, if the woman needed help. Such a kind woman, Meghan. If Meghan Markle was in her late teens, she was in Los Angeles. She was finishing high school. She finished high school at the age of 18. And she was in LA. Mr. Markle has never mentioned any trip to New York at all. Meghan Markle was in her teens. And back then, we're looking at 35 years ago. How old is Meghan Markle? 25 years ago? I don't even know how old that woman is. Let's say 25 years ago. She was in her teens. That was 25 years ago. Cell phones, guys, were in its infancy. I know that nowadays we think of ourselves with cell phone is everywhere. I had my first cell phone when I was 33 years of age. Meghan Markle is only 12 years older than me. But when I had my first cell phone, it was like those huge bricks. Those are the huge bricks. Meghan Markle is talking that in 2000. That would have been, she graduated in 2003 from university. So that would mean that it would be 1998, 1999. Cell phones, really, I know you guys can comprehend or wrap things around this. But in 1998, 1999, cell phones were not really the norm. I mean, they even have... Apple had come out with an iPad, or not iPad, it was something called for music, because you couldn't even download music in your phone or really take pictures. The pictures were like crap. So what is Meghan Markle talking about here? When I was in my late teens, you were in California. You had never taken a trip to New York, as per Mr. Markle, who has never mentioned a trip to New York when Meghan was in her teens. She went to Big Bear, she went to Hawaii, but not like that. So this is also written in this op-ed. So there are so many discrepancies about this miscarriage. Is Abigail Spencer telling the truth in the very public Netflix documentary, or is Meghan Markle telling the truth in her op-ed? And what comes next is going to blow your mind. The California Public Health Code determines that if a baby or a fetus is born 20 weeks or less, it is considered clinical waste. If a woman has a miscarriage or it's an abortion under 10 weeks, it is considered clinical waste. And according to the Public Health Code, it has to be disposed by the hospital as such. What does that mean? It means that the clinical waste, in order to be safe, has to be cremated, incinerated, burnt. Yet, Prince Harry details. I have this article here that I'm reading, and it's also in his book. Prince Harry details moment he buried unborn child in grave he dug with bare hands. You heard me. You heard me. Because of course, guess what date is the date that they had the miscarriage? July 1st, the date of Princess Diana's birth. Princess Diana's birthday. The very same date that Meghan Markle had the first date with Harry, July 1st in the United Kingdom, had sex with him. And now, she, on July 1st, towards the end of Spare's 82nd chapter, the prince details how on the first morning of their new house, July 1st, his mother's birthday, the Duchess showed the first signs of a miscarriage. She experienced abdominal pains and bleeding before collapsing to the floor, prompting a race to their local hospital. The royal said the couple understood what had happened as their doctor walked into the room. He wrote, "When the doctor walked into the room, I didn't hear one word she said. I just watched her face, her body language. I already knew. We both did." He said, that he and his wife held each other as they both wept after hearing the news. He said he only felt this way 3 other times while in the back of a car with his mother and brother being chased by Paps, in an Apache helicopter above Afghanistan, and at Nottingham Cottage while Meghan was planning to take her life. The couple left the hospital clutching a tiny package and traveled to a secret location, to a secret place under a spreading banyan tree. While Meg wept, I dug a hole with my hands and set the tiny package softly in the ground. Harry, buddy, whatever it is you buried, it wasn't a fetus, it wasn't a baby. And I'm going to get into how evil Meghan Markle is in that doctor in that hospital, if indeed he was given a package. Now, what is really disturbing here, guys, is that Meghan is living something in her head. Because here you have an article from 1994, I believe, when Princess Diana helped her good friend bury her embryo on the grounds of Kensington Palace. So when I told you before that this woman is stalking Princess Diana, this is not, I was not kidding. This woman is insane. This woman needs medical attention, or she's just plain evil. And Harry, it's either incredibly complicit or doesn't know his own mother history, because from what we've seen, Harry doesn't very know much. He's confused as that. In his book, he says that he received a phone call. He was coldly told of his grandmother's death, the Queen Mother, by a phone call, when in reality, he was skiing with his father and brother, and it was the Prince of Wales at the time, King Charles, the now King Charles, who received that phone call and told his 2 sons, and then they flew back to England to bury the Queen Mother. So we do know that Harry's recollections may vary. And we do know that Harry doesn't even know his mom's history. Or Meghan Markle used that to say, you see, I lost the baby too on July 1st. We're meant to be. And this is evil because this is the evil royal family telling you that, wishing ill upon us. So Harry was allowed to walk out with clinical waste and buried it in a secret place, breaking all sorts of public health codes by the hospital and by themselves, because you can be fined or placed in jail because that if that is not disposed of, because that's a decomposing waste. And we don't know how old the baby was, because if the baby was 20 after 20 weeks, then there's no way. They required a death certificate as per California law. If a baby, or if a woman miscarriages a baby or has an abortion after 20 weeks, then you do need a death certificate. And sometimes you have to be handed over to the police if you miscarriage the baby to see if it was a natural miscarriage or it was a self-induced miscarriage. So he would have needed a death certificate, and he would have needed a proper burial. So how many more laws is Harry breaking? This while having a visa, a residence visa, which is, he would be committing state crime, and by taking drugs, committing, as he has said, committing a federal crime as well. Now let's get into Lilibet. Meghan Markle's obstetrician, who helped deliver Lilibet, shuts her practice with little notice, telling patients she needs to focus on my own health and be with my family. Dr. Melissa Drake says she would close her Santa Barbara practice from June 30th. According to her, or to what's in this fake copy of a birth certificate released by TMZ, the baby was born, the Lilibet was delivered on June 4th. So a little bit over 2 weeks later, this doctor with a thriving practice in Santa Barbara shuts down her practice. The obstetrician, this is documented, the obstetrician who helped deliver Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's second child, has shut her practice with little notice, telling patients she needs to focus on my own health and be with my family. She's, FYI, she's back quietly practicing again. And she's married to a highly well-known doctor with a very specialized fertility clinic. Dr. Melissa Drake made the announcement on Instagram when she said it had been the honor of my life to work with the women of Santa Barbara before announcing a leave of absence starting on June 30th. She said the patient's procedures, and Dr. Drake, who is married to a fertility doctor and has 4 step kids, oversaw the birth of Queen Elizabeth's 12th great-grandchild, who's now 6th in line to the throne, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital on June 4th, 2021. Expectant mothers in the wealthy region were taken by surprise over the sudden closure, with one branding the news shocking and handled terribly. And this is her announcement that she posted on Instagram. Dear friends, I am closing my practice. It has been the honor of my life to work with the women of Santa Barbara. I am taking a leave of absence in order to focus on my own health and be with my family. It is important that you continue with appropriate medical care. Therefore, you should establish contact with another physician, midwife, as soon as possible. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the most personal, profound, and important days of your lives. And then she gives another announcement. If you have a procedure or surgery scheduled prior to June 30th, it can continue as previously planned. If you are pregnant and your due date is after June 30th, it will be necessary to transfer care to a different practice. A release of records form can be downloaded from our website or provided to you in person. Warmly and best wishes, Dr. Drake. Now, another little tidbit of information. In the United States, nor anywhere, most places in the world, they do not allow any titles on a birth certificate of a child. They're not allowed. Both parents, father and mother, have to provide their names of birth. Harry's name is Henry Charles Albert David. He was not the Duke of Sussex when he was born. So when we see this fake birth certificate with Harry's fake name, it's not allowed under U.S. law. It is not allowed unless he legally changed his name to. But even then, they would still require his original name at birth. And of course, there would be no titles, because this means that Lilibet was born to the Duke of Sussex. And what if the king decides to recall his title? Was that a way for them to force the king never to take away his title by putting Harry's title, current title, on a birth certificate? Which is stupid, because all royal titles, styles, and dignities belong to the crown of the United Kingdom. So before, guys, I used to think a lot, and I thought that maybe Meghan Markle had frozen her eggs, because her father said that in when P. Dinah interviewed him. He said that Meghan Markle had frozen her eggs and she had them in some place in Canada or California. And I thought, well, they used her eggs. But given how very little maternal issues there are with Meghan Markle, this woman is not maternal at all. The lack of closeness, the lack of being with the kid. This woman is everywhere but with her kids. And we've seen on Netflix how they portray that there is mother and child, Harry and Meghan, implying that that's Harry and Meghan on playing on the beach, when it's clearly Eugenie and her son playing on the beach. How this is Ashley and Archie, and the so-called child called Archie that they're trying to sell as Meghan and Archie. I firmly believe that is actually Eugenie's son. Like the maid said, I did a maid interview where she said that the only time she saw a child in that mansion was when one of his cousins came to visit, and she came with a small child. The maid has said in the interview, which now you have articles about it, that they would take her phones away at the gates. They were not allowed to have the phones at all. That Harry and Meghan don't live together. And we've seen in Tatler's magazine where it says that they interviewed Meghan Markle this year at her £2 million mansion in California. We know that their mansion is $14.5 million, not $2.5 million. That's how much it would be with the exchange rate. The maid said she never saw a child. We have People magazine lying about this. And given everything that I've told you about, I now believe that those are not Meghan Markle's children. I believe that they may be Harry's children. And then we also have that Harry had a hernia or undescended testicle that he needed a surgery at the age of 3. And that he had issues with fertility. And I used to say, well, no, the children are theirs. I'm sure that the children are theirs. It's just, maybe they were not conceived naturally, but the children are theirs. Because Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, she visited a lot of IVF clinics when she got pregnant the second time. Because she couldn't conceive naturally or, sex-wise or stuff like that. Which, that's okay. The problem that I have is not that Meghan would use a surrogate or that she can't have any children. The problem I have is with the lies. And now I believe that those children are not hers. And they should, if there are any children, which now I don't think there are any kids. I don't think there are any kids. I don't think they live in that mansion. The maid said that they don't live in that mansion. That she would come at 6 o'clock in the morning and Harry and Meghan would come separately around 10 a.m. in the morning. And whenever they needed to do pap walks, they would walk outside. I now don't believe that there are any children, given all these fantastic accounts of things. And it goes to show the D-list script that Harry and Meghan have tried to pitch to us. Now, what I ask you is the following. Is Harry complicit, or is he really a retard, so stupid, ignorant of his own mother's history that he doesn't know that his mother helped her best friend bury a fetus on the grounds in Kensington, and that Meghan Markle is reliving that experience as her own, that she's pretending that she had a miscarriage as Julia Roberts did in Still Magnolias. That Archie, that Meghan Markle was sent with 2 epidurals. She was sent packing within an hour of the child's birth back to Frogmore Cottage. And the reason why I say within an hour is because if within 2 hours, which means 2 hours or less, they were back at Frogmore Cottage, because you have to consider that they got in the car, that she had to be cleaned up. She had to wash up, cleaned up. She had to be carried because with an epidural, you can't walk. So she had to be dressed. The child had to be clean. They barely registered the kid for jaundice or anything like that. A child that seriously had serious complications. And then with Lily, we've talked of the miscarriage. And with Lily, that the doctor shut down her practice. I haven't been able, neither me, nor Bookworm, nor Pidina, nor anybody has been able to get a copy of a birth certificate for that child. And every single time the Office of Vital Records of California, they keep telling me, we don't have it in our system. Go to Santa Barbara. And if I had the money, I would fly today to Santa Barbara to ask for that copy of the birth certificate. And we know that in that birth certificate, Harry uses titles, which is not allowed under U.S. law, period. So now I am convinced they don't have any kids. They don't have any kids. And if by any chance there are some kids, I don't believe they're Meghan's. We have her brother saying that she had a hysterectomy. We got her father saying that she froze her eggs. But what if she was too cheap and those eggs went to waste? They want us to believe that California or the hospital would allow them to violate. You know that if the hospital had allowed Harry to take that fetus, the hospital can be shut down because they're violating public health. It's a public health violation, a real serious public health violation, to allow clinical waste, because if the child is under 20 weeks, it's considered medical waste, and it has to be incinerated. So if it was incinerated, and if it's under 20 weeks, then Harry would have just spread the ashes, not buried with his bare hands. So Harry's lending himself to this D-list script, which I don't buy. I don't buy.